Hello and welcome to Hawk Mountain Sanctuary's Home Discovery Series, and happy Earth Day! Our family-friendly Home Discovery Series is targeted for students of all ages and interested learners. Today's program is Be a Wildlife Hero. My name is Jamie Dawson. I'm the Director of Education at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary. Thank you so much for joining us today to celebrate Earth Day! Hawk Mountain is the world's very first refuge for birds of prey, and we continue to work hard to be leaders in raptor conservation, science, and education locally and globally around the world. Hawk Mountain is a private nonprofit, and membership is the lifeblood of our organization. To all of our members, we could not do what we do without your support, so thank you so very much. If you're joining us today and you're not a member, we hope that you consider becoming one in the future. Hawk Mountain hopes that everyone remains safe and healthy during this time of COVID crisis, and we are so excited to offer our community a variety of free virtual programming. As always, Hawk Mountain greatly appreciates any donations. Just so everyone is aware, today's program is being recorded and will then be accessible on Hawk Mountain's YouTube channel as a continued resource. We also have a link on our website directly connecting you to our YouTube channel. At any time throughout today's program, viewers may submit questions through the Q&A feature on the Zoom platform, and I'll do my best to answer some questions from the audience at the end of the program. And we are so excited that you are joining us today to celebrate Earth Day, woo! And it also happens to be the 50th anniversary of the very first Earth Day, so all the more reason to celebrate. So for today's program, we're going to learn about the true wildlife heroes that made Hawk Mountain Sanctuary possible. Then we're going to discover how we all can be our own wildlife heroes in our backyard, neighborhood, communities, and beyond. Then we will learn how to make a bird feeder out of simple household items. And lastly, we have a very special animal ambassador who is waiting very excitedly to meet you all. So I am so excited to share with you all the story of the creation of Hawk Mountain Sanctuary. And it's a true story, it's a remarkable story, and it is the story of real wildlife heroes. And what better way to tell a story than to share photographs? So to tell this story, I'm going to be sharing some historical photographs from the history of Hawk Mountain. So we know that Hawk Mountain is the world's first sanctuary for birds of prey. So what does that mean to be a sanctuary? Well, as you probably know, it means to be protected. So the raptors, the birds of prey are protected at Hawk Mountain, but also all of wildlife is protected there. The forest, the land, the soil, the plants, the trees, everything is protected. But that wasn't always the case. So I invite you to travel back in time with me to the early 1900s when it was a much different story. In 1929, the Pennsylvania Game Commission placed a $5 bounty on the head of the largest accipiter, the northern goshawk. Now, $5 might not sound like a lot today, but back then, during the Great Depression, that was a lot of money. Back then, the raptors were viewed as pests and were believed to be a nuisance to local farmers and hunters because of their diet of game birds. That's the same game birds that people that lived in the area hunted for food. So adults and children alike began killing countless raptors for sport, money, and to eliminate competition for natural resources. Many people were not able to identify the differences between the northern goshawk and other species of raptors, so they shot different species of hawks and eagles indiscriminately, and so began the era of hawk hunting. In 1931, Richard Poe, a Philadelphia photographer, naturalist, and hawk lover, read an article about the status of the goshawk in Pennsylvania. The article mapped the locations from where goshawks had been sent in for bounty, and Poe noticed A large concentration of goshawks shot in the area north of Hamburg, Pennsylvania. In the fall of 1932, he set off to find the popular shooting ground and stumbled upon Hawk Mountain on a day when it was crowded with gunners. He returned the next week with his brother and his friend, Henry Collins. They happened to come on a windless day when no hawks were flying and no gunners were on the mountaintop. But the ground was covered with dead and injured hawks left over from the previous days of shooting. The three men put the live hawks out of their misery and then lined up the hundreds of carcasses and took pictures of them. During the next 2 years, Poe tried various avenues to have the shooting stopped with little success. In the fall of 1933, he showed his photographs and spoke about the problem to a meeting of the Hawk and Owl Society. The National Audubon Society expressed an interest in the situation and sent a scout to investigate. Unfortunately, there was no wind nor birds that day, and the matter was dropped. While unfortunately nothing could be done for the birds that had already been hunted and killed, Richard Poe set about in exposing this photo to conservationists in hopes of making a positive change. In June of 1934, Poe received a call from a woman named Rosalie Edge, pictured here. She had listened to Poe's plea at the meeting and was ready to act on her own concerning Hawk Mountain. The 56-year-old Rosalie Edge was a rare kind of person who could act independently on the strength of her own convictions. Such courage and energy is all the more amazing when we remember how profoundly her behavior conflicted with women's usual role in the society at that time. Starting in 1929, she began to attend Audubon Association meetings and demand accountability from its leaders. Her ability to rebel against powerful institutions led her not to accept certain practices in the National Audubon Society, of which she was a life member. These practices included the trapping of animals for fur, for which the association was paid. In protest, Edge and some friends formed the Emergency Conservation Committee, an organization that would not only act against Audubon, but also would take on conservation projects that Audubon failed to adopt. In 1934, Edge borrowed the money to lease the land that would become Hawk Mountain with an option to buy. She raised the funds to buy 1,398 acres of the land in 1938. She paid $2.50 an acre. In doing so, she established the first sanctuary in the world for birds of prey. Rosalie Edge needed somebody to make sure the hawks at Hawk Mountain would be protected, and so she hired Maurice Brune to guard the sanctuary. Maurice Brune was an ornithologist, someone who studies birds, from Boston. His determination and courage well matched that of Rosalie Edge, as he spent his first seasons at Hawk Mountain directly confronting hunters who came to the mountaintop to shoot, as well as posting signs in the area surrounding the sanctuary. He faced tremendous local threats, hatred, and opposition, but luckily, no personal harm came to him. He was famous for inviting the hunters to lay down their weapons at the base of the mountain and instead equip themselves with binoculars to view and appreciate the birds. It is through his actions that Hawk Mountain turned from simple posted property to a place of education and sanctuary for all. Maurice Brune's wife, Irma, worked alongside him for the 35 years during which he remained as curator. Often she acted as keeper of the gate while he remained on north lookout to count the hawks as they flew by. The couple lived at Schaumbach's Tavern for 18 years. Maurice and Irma remained on Hawk Mountain until 1966, and it was during these years that the education, research, and monitoring programs, which now distinguish the sanctuary, came into being. What began as a desperate measure to protect the hawks flying over the Kittatinny Ridge has grown to over 2,500 acres of preserved woodland habitat and an organization with national and international repute. Maurice and Irma conducted their own informal education programs, transmitting their infectious enthusiasm for conservation along with hawk identification pointers. Many Hawk Mountain old-timers fondly recall afternoons or evenings spent on the porch of Schambach's, chatting with the couple. Except for the several years during which Maurice was in service in World War II, hawk counts have been made from Hawk Mountain's lookout every fall since 1934. These early hawk counts provided a beginning to the sanctuary's current research program. After the posted signs went up around the newly founded sanctuary, many local hunters protested for their rights to continue using the mountain as hunting ground. Perhaps one of the most shocking images of protest is the mangled body of a hawk nailed above the posted property sign, the victim of Defiance shooting. Thankfully, after Maurice and Irma Brun invited people to take part in hawk watching, people began enjoying and appreciating the raptors, and the protests from hunters eventually came to an end. What a remarkable story. From shooting grounds to sanctuary, it's really an amazing story, the history of Hawk Mountain, founded by true wildlife heroes. So we know that Hawk Mountain has the world's longest running raptor migration count in the world. Started in 1934 by Maurice Brun, and for over 85 years continuing, every fall, people are counting and recording every single raptor species that passes by Hawk Mountain during migration. But why do this? Why spend all this time and energy counting and recording the migration of raptors? Why does it matter? Well, these long-term migration counts allow us to assess the population trends of raptors so that we realize and know when certain species are declining. But why is it important to know if raptor species are declining? Well, for one, raptors are awesome, but also it's much more than that. Raptors play a really important and critical role in the entire ecosystem. Raptors are bioindicators because they are apex predators. They're at the top of the food chain. So if you have a healthy population of top predators such as raptors, that's a good indication that the entire food web and ecosystem is healthy because it can support the top predators. But if you don't have a healthy population of top predators, that may be a sign that the food web is disrupted and perhaps the ecosystem is threatened. And a strong example of this can be shown by sharing another story of a very famous visitor to Hawk Mountain, Rachel Carson. So here we have a picture of Rachel Carson. She's watching migrating hawks at Hawk Mountain, and this picture was taken in 1945. So in studying Hawk Mountain's long-term raptor migration counts, Rachel Carson noticed something strange. She saw that the young of certain species, such as bald eagles and peregrine falcons, were disappearing from migration counts. There were still adults migrating through, but the immature birds were no longer seen during migration counts like they once were. Because of the long-term raptor population trends from Hawk Mountain's migration counts, Rachel was able to link the decline in young eagles and peregrine falcons to the nation's heavy use of pesticides, such as DDT. It turns out that chemicals in DDT actually weakened the eggshells of these birds so that the eggs would crack and break while being incubated in the nest. Rachel published her findings in her book, Silent Spring, in 1962. Silent Spring greatly spread public and political awareness about the dangerous effects of heavily used pesticides like DDT on the environment, wildlife, and public health. Some say this spurred the 1970 National Environmental Protection Act, and it happens to be the 50th anniversary of this National Environmental Protection Act this year. And now, thanks to these efforts and also other legal protections, the peregrine falcon and bald eagle populations are recovering and doing well. And here we have a peregrine falcon, our largest falcon that we see passing by Hawk Mountain here in Pennsylvania. And as you may know, the fastest animal on the planet, clocking in at speeds of over 230 miles per hour. So I hope you agree that the story of Hawk Mountain, it's a remarkable story. It's a story of challenges. It's a story of perseverance. It's a story of hope, and it's a success. And it's a story that needs to be shared. So now I'd like us to learn about different ways that we all can be wildlife heroes in our own backyards, in our neighborhoods, and our communities. Okay, be a wildlife hero. So first we're going to talk about what you can do if you encounter a wild animal that appears to be injured or orphaned. And then later in the presentation, we're going to talk about specific things that you can do to make a positive difference for birds in your community and also around the world. So be a wildlife hero. What to do if you find injured or orphaned wild animals. A wild animal's greatest gift is its freedom. Wild and free, let it be. Just a reminder, you should never touch wild animals unless it is absolutely necessary. It's illegal to keep wild animals as pets. But sometimes you may find a wild animal that appears to be hurt or orphaned, and you want to help, but you might not know what to do. Okay. Only licensed wildlife rehabilitation centers are able to take in and care for injured or orphaned wildlife. Hawk Mountain is not a wildlife rehabilitation center. However, we do work with some local wildlife rehabilitation centers who are wonderful partners with us. And the two wildlife rehabilitation centers closest to Hawk Mountain are Red Creek Wildlife Center located in Schuylkill Haven, and also Carbon County Environmental Education Center, which is located in Summit Hill, close to Jim Thorpe. Personally, in my past, I've done a lot of volunteer work doing wildlife rehabilitation in Bucks County, on Sanibel Island in Florida, and also in Venezuela. And I also took a few years ago a wonderful wildlife rehabilitation course with Red Creek Wildlife Center with Peggy Hentz, and some of the information I'll be sharing with you today is information I've learned at that wildlife rehabilitation course. Baby bunnies. We have to talk about baby bunnies because there's so many of them that find themselves in wildlife care centers. So, baby bunnies are the most common animal in wildlife care centers due to gardening accidents, lawn mowing, and being found by pets and children. The discovery of a cottontail nest does not necessarily mean there's an emergency or that intervention is needed. Because the success rates of rehabilitating young bunnies are often much lower than those for other species, bunnies should be left with their mother when possible. Okay, we're going to debunk some bunny myths that you may have heard. It's time to discover the truth. Okay, mother rabbit will abandon or kill babies because the nest was disturbed or the babies were touched. False. Not true at all. Another bunny myth, the mother rabbit is not seen around the nest. Therefore, the nest of babies is abandoned. False, not true. Mother rabbits actually do not spend much time at all around their nest. And this is to keep their scent away so predators, many of whom hunt by scent, cannot find the nest. So baby bunnies don't have a scent, and that helps camouflage them and keep them safe from predators. So, except for short visits to the nest to feed and tend to the kits or baby bunnies, the mother rabbit stays away from the nest. So, if you discover a bunny nest and you're not sure if it's an abandoned, there are two tests you can do: the string test and the belly skin test. So, for the string test over here, you can take some string or yarn and you can put it in an X over the bunny nest. And you want to do that later in the day because it's typically in the later evening when the mother rabbits come back to the nest to feed the babies. So the next day, you would want to go back and check on the nest and notice if the string or the yarn has been disturbed or moved at all, then that's a sign that the mother is returning secretly and feeding the babies. Now, the other test is the belly skin test. And for this one, you have to pick up one of the baby bunnies. And this is like maybe you haven't noticed any movement on the string for the string test and you want to take a closer look. So what you're looking for is a light colored triangle patch in the center of the abdomen. So for the baby bunnies, their skin is somewhat translucent, so you should be able to see it. And that white triangular patch is the milk in the stomach. So bunnies take about 12 hours to digest milk. So you should be able to see that if the mother is still alive and feeding the babies. So this slide are situations that really are true bunny emergencies, and when you would have to, if you choose to intervene to help and take these bunnies to a wildlife rehab center. So anytime that there's a visible injury, the bunny should be seen by a wildlife rehabilitator. However, you can leave the uninjured bunnies in the nest. Anytime that there is blood on or near the nest, all the babies are in danger. The blood can attract predators and also flies. So the presence of maggots or flies are life-threatening to the baby bunnies. Their skin is very vulnerable, and the flies and maggots will actually eat through the skin of the baby bunnies and kill them. Anytime a bunny is in the mouth of a dog or a cat, it is a life-threatening emergency, and they must be treated with antibiotics because dog and cat saliva contains a bacteria that's very dangerous and very contagious for wild animals, especially bunnies. Another bunny emergency would be an extreme change in the local habitat, or maybe a natural disaster such as heavy flooding. Maybe there's a really heavy spring snowfall, or there's construction, removing ground cover, things like that. If that happens, then the entire nest has to be taken to a wildlife care center. If people relocate a bunny nest, the mother will not be able to find it as the babies have no scent, and then they would slowly starve to death. So there's oftentimes people that see a baby bunny and they think it's abandoned, and they want to help that bunny so much, they pick it up and they take it to a wildlife center. But what has just happened, folks? It could be a bunny kidnapping. So at 3 weeks of age, baby rabbits leave the nest and they start exploring. At this time, they're about the size of a chipmunk, or if you have a $1 bill, they're maybe about 2/3 the size of the dollar bill. They're fully furred, their eyes are open, their ears are erect, and they have the ability to hop around. Although they may look small and helpless, they are old enough to be independent and do not need help. So at this point, you should just let them be. Deer. If you find a baby deer sitting alone by itself, please leave it where it is. It's normal and common for mother deer to leave their fawns alone in fields while they go and feed. Baby deer do not have a scent, just like the baby bunnies don't, and this camouflages them from predators. As long as the mother deer is alive, it will come back to its baby. Many well-meaning people have mistakenly taken baby fawns that they believed were abandoned when really the mother was just out feeding. I love box turtles. And did you know that removing a box turtle from its natural territory can kill it? It's true. So box turtles spend most of their lives within 250 yards from the nest where they were born. They develop a mental map of where all the food and water sources are within their territories. When people find box turtles and move them to different locations, sometimes believing they are helping, the box turtle will not know where to find food and water and will always try to find its way back to its home territory. So unfortunately, many box turtles can get hit when they're crossing the road, which is a serious threat. So if you do happen to see a box turtle attempting to cross the road and you are able to safely pull over and move it, you can do so, but you don't want to move it to a different location. You want to keep it in the same direction it was going, but just safely on the side of the road so it doesn't have to go through the danger of the slow cross. Amphibians. So if you care about amphibians, it's best to just admire them with your eyes and resist that temptation to scoop them up with your hands. So amphibian skin is very porous. And the oil on human hands, even when your hands are clean, can be harmful to these really sensitive creatures. Many of amphibians also actually breathe and respire and exchange gases through their skin. So it's very important to protect our amphibians, as 1/3 of all amphibian species are endangered worldwide due to habitat loss, pollution, invasive species, and disease. And earlier, when we were talking about raptors being bioindicators because they're top predators, well, another group of animals that are also bioindicators are amphibians, not because they're top predators, but because of their very porous and very sensitive skin. Any pollutants or changes in the environment can directly enter their body and make them almost such as the canary in the coal mines for pollution in the environment. Okay, baby birds. How many of you have ever found a baby bird out of the nest and you weren't sure what to do? So I just want to start off by saying, you know, in any of these situations with these different animals we're talking about, always call your local wildlife rehabilitation center and explain the situation, and they can give you guidance. We're providing you with some background information to better educate you about these situations. So in the instance of a baby bird, please always call a wildlife center and they can guide you. But some general background information is this. Okay, you see the baby bird, it's out of the nest. First, what you want to do is ask yourself, is this bird visibly injured? If the answer is yes, then absolutely call your local wildlife rehab center immediately. But if this baby bird doesn't appear to be injured, then you ask yourself, does the bird have feathers? So if the bird does not have feathers, that means it's still a nestling. And what you want to do is put that baby bird, that baby nestling, back in the nest if you can. So what you want to do is you want to look, can you see a nest? If you can see the nest, put that nestling back in the nest. That's its best chance for survival. It is a myth that touching a baby bird will cause its parents to abandon it. That's just not true. But if you can't see the nest and you can't find a nest to put the bird back in, that's when you want to contact your local wildlife rehab center and take the baby bird there. Okay, so going back, you found this baby bird, it's out of the nest. Does it have feathers? And let's say in this situation, it does have feathers. Well, that means it's a fledgling. And it just might be part of its normal developmental process being on the ground. So next you want to ask yourself, it's a fledgling, but okay, is it in immediate danger? And so what could immediate danger be? It could be, there could be a cat or a dog present. It could be on a road or in a high traffic area. So if it is in immediate danger, then you want to move it to a sheltered spot nearby, maybe under a hedge or a bush or something like that. But if this fledgling is not in immediate danger, you don't have to do anything. In fact, do nothing. Fledglings can spend 2 or 3 days on the ground waiting for their feathers to completely develop before they can fly. So hopefully this was a little helpful to understand what you can do if you encounter an orphaned or injured wildlife in your backyard or your community. Okay, so now we're going to talk about 7 simple actions we all can do to help birds. And this list of simple actions was compiled by Cornell, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and we're excited to share this with you because it's some good stuff. So number 1, make windows safer day and night. Up to 1 billion birds are estimated to die each year after hitting windows in the United States and Canada. By day, birds perceive reflections in glass as habitat they can fly into. By night, migratory birds drawn in by city lights are at high risk of colliding with buildings. But the good news is there's things you can do to prevent it. On the outside of the window, install screens or break up reflections using film, paint, or copia bird savers or other string spaced no more than 2 inches high or 4 inches wide. And at our bookstore at Hawk Mountain, we do sell decals that can go on windows. I personally bought some. They're nice little leaf shapes. And here you can see the Acopian bird savers here. Number 2, keep cats indoors. We certainly love our furry feline friends, but we also want to protect the birds too. So cats are estimated to kill more than 2.6 billion birds annually in the US and Canada. And cats aren't also just killing birds, they're also killing a variety of other wildlife such as small mammals, amphibians, snakes, and they are responsible for a big loss of biodiversity in Pennsylvania. So cats make great pets, but more than 110 million feral and pet cats now roam in the United States and Canada. These non-native predators instinctively hunt and kill birds, even when they're well fed. So some things you can do to prevent this is, keep your cats indoors and keep your cats healthy by keeping them indoors, or you could create a catio. You can also train your cat to walk on a leash. So next, number 3, reduce lawn and plant natives. So oftentimes, in North America, when we think of our typical lawn, we think of this green, the standard green grassy lawn. And actually that can be a barren desert for many wildlife. There's not lots of food or resources there for wildlife. So with these lawns, birds have fewer places to safely rest during migration and to raise their young. More than 10 million acres of land in the United States were converted to developed land between 1982 and 1997. Lawns and pavements just don't offer enough food or shelter for many birds and other wildlife. With more than 40 million acres of lawn in the US alone, there's huge potential to support wildlife by replacing lawns with native plants. Native plants add interest and beauty to your yard and neighborhood and provide shelter and nesting areas for birds. The nectar, seeds, berries, and insects sustain birds and diverse wildlife. And as you may know, Hawk Mountain has 2 native plant cells each year, one in the spring and one in the fall. Ours was supposed to be May 16th and 17th this year. And those native plant cells are made possible by a wonderful group of volunteers that are so important to Hawk Mountain. Like all our volunteers are native plant volunteers and native habitat garden volunteers. So thank you to all that you do. Avoiding pesticides, number 4. More than 1 billion products of pesticides are applied just in the United States each year. The continent's most widely used insecticides, called neonicotinoids or neonics, are lethal to birds and insects that birds consume. Common weed killers used around homes such as 2,4-D, and glyphosate, which is used in Roundup, can be toxic to wildlife. And glyphosate has been declared a probable human carcinogen. Pesticides that are toxic to birds can harm them directly through contact or if they eat contaminated seeds or prey. Pesticides can also harm birds indirectly by reducing the number of available insects, which birds need to survive. So a healthy choice is consider purchasing organic products. Nearly 70% of produce in the United States contains pesticides. If you want, you could take it further and urge US representatives to co-sponsor the Saving America's Pollinators Act. And this bill requires the Environmental Protection Agency to suspend registrations of neonics. Number 5, drink coffee that's good for the birds. 3/4 of the world's coffee farms grow their plants in the sun. And this destroys forests that birds and other wildlife need for food and shelter. Sun-grown coffee also often requires using environmentally harmful pesticides and fertilizers. On the other hand, shade-grown coffee preserves a forest canopy that helps migratory birds survive the winter. However, too few consumers are aware of the problems of sun coffee. Those who are more aware may be reluctant to pay more for environmentally sustainable coffee. And let me tell you firsthand, this coffee is delicious. This is shade-grown coffee and organic coffee that we sell at the Hawk Mountain bookstore. Number 6, protect our planet from plastic. Reduce, reuse, recycle. All right, so it's estimated that 4,900 million tons of plastic have accumulated in landfills and in our environment worldwide. This pollutes our oceans, harms wildlife, especially seabirds, whales, and turtles that mistakenly eat plastic or they get tangled up in it. Plastic takes more than 400 years to degrade. and 91% of plastics created are not recycled. Studies show that at least 80 seabird species ingest plastic, mistaking it for food. Cigarette lighters, toothbrushes, and other trash have been found in the stomachs of dead albatrosses. So what you can do to help is simple. Avoid single-use plastics, including bags, bottles, wraps, and disposable utensils. It's far better to choose reusable items, but if you do have to use disposable plastic, be sure to recycle it. To take it a step further, you could also advocate for bans of plastic bags, styrofoam, and straws. Encourage stores to offer incentives for reusable bags, and ask restaurants and other businesses to phase out single-use plastics. Number 7, watch birds and share what you see. Citizen science. Okay, the world's most abundant bird, the passenger pigeon, went extinct, and people didn't even realize how quickly it was vanishing until it was too late. Monitoring birds is essential to help protect them, but tracking the health of the world's 10,000 bird species is an immense challenge, and we need everyone's help to do this. To understand how birds are faring, scientists need hundreds of thousands of people to report what they're seeing in their backyards, neighborhoods, and wild places around the world. Without this information, scientists will not have enough timely data to show where and when birds are declining around the world. So I'd like to share that on Wednesday, May 13th, we have a virtual program called Citizen Science and You, which will teach you about many different citizen science projects you can participate in, even from your own backyard and your own house. This is from our website, Raptors Sighting Report Forms, another form of citizen science where you can report to Hawk Mountain different raptors you see, and this helps us understand what's going on with these populations. And then at the bottom here, we have eBird through the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which is a huge database where anyone can input different bird species they see. So at our citizen science program on May 13th, we're actually going to have special guests who are reviewers in Pennsylvania for eBird, and they're going to explain everything that you need to know how to do this. Okay, so here are just a few more things you can do specifically to help raptors, because you know we certainly love our raptors at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, and we hope that you do too. So please don't use rodenticides. So when you're poisoning any rodents that may be pests in your home, you're actually entering poison into the entire food web, and that can really accumulate to be lethal in predators that hunt these rodents, such as raptors. Another big threat for raptors is being struck by vehicles, and many raptors that are living in captivity because they were injured and can't survive in the wild, it's often because they have been struck by vehicles. And that is the case for our resident raptors that live with us at Hawk Mountain on our education team. So what you can do to help to prevent this is simply don't litter, especially when you're driving. Even if it's something like you're driving and you're munching on an apple and you're like, nah, I'll throw the apple out the window, it's biodegradable, something will eat it. Well, guess what? Something will eat it. And many critters have learned that there's lots of food sources by our roads, which is our trash. And as you know, there's often lots of roadkill, unfortunately, along the roads of these creatures getting hit while they're consuming our trash or crossing the road. So hunters such as raptors have learned food is by the road, and whether the raptors are eating the roadkill or the carrion themselves, or they're hunting the other critters eating our trash, it can unfortunately often result in a car strike. So please don't litter. Hunters, please don't use lead-based ammunition. There's a lot of studies showing lead poisoning in raptors, especially eagles, and the lead toxicity builds up and it can be fatal. So if you are a hunter, please use ammunition that's not made of lead. And another important thing you can do to protect raptors and all birds is protect habitat, especially along the migration corridor. And you can also do that by supporting organizations that carry on this work, such as Hawk Mountain. And we have we have a program where people can actually purchase carbon credits and to help preserve our forests through Hawk Mountain. So you can find out more information how to do that on our website. And lastly, your consumer choice makes a huge difference in making a positive impact for raptors and all birds. So please, when you're purchasing products or services, please purchase from businesses and organizations that are using bird-friendly, eco-friendly, and wildlife-friendly practices. Wonderful. Okay, so, and I'm back. Okay, so now I'm going to show you just a simple little bird feeder you could make with some objects you might have around your home. So let me show you some things you might need. I'm just going to tell you the basics how to do it, and then you can do it on your own time. Okay, you might need a roll of toilet paper. Hopefully you still have toilet paper at your home. Or if you have a big pine tree outside your house like I do, maybe you could collect a pine cone and use that. You might need some honey. Make sure it's all natural, pure honey. Or you could also use peanut butter as long as you don't have any allergies. But make sure it's an all natural peanut butter that has nothing in it other than ground nuts. You will need some bird seed. And also you'll need some string, some yarn, maybe some cord, or maybe you could borrow someone's shoelace if you need to. But anyway, okay, so what you're gonna do, I'll show you what the finished product look like. And then I'll kind of walk you through the steps. So just a fun little project you can do at home. This is the pine cone version. So what I did for this, I took the string and I kind of just tied it around the pine cone. And then I took honey and I kind of drizzled it all in the little pockets of the pine cone. And then I had fun sprinkling bird seed all in it. And I started to do that, and you could certainly add more seed. Okay, so the toilet paper roll bird feeder. Okay, so this one, I took the string and I kind of slipped it through the center of the toilet paper tube. And then I just had a good time slathering peanut butter all over the tube. And then I was rolling it in bird seed and sprinkling the bird seed on it. So have fun doing that. And then maybe you could hang it up outside your home in a location where you could observe the birds that are feeding on it. And maybe you could even enter what birds you are seeing on eBird for citizen science. That would be amazing. Okay, so now it's time for us to meet a special guest who is actually an animal ambassador, a feathered animal ambassador, and he's so excited to meet everyone. I actually had to keep him in another room because he's so enthusiastic and boisterous. So I'm going to leave for just 1 second, go get this special visitor, and I'm going to come right back. I'll only be a minute. Now's the time if you need to get up and stretch, take a drink of water. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm coming back. All right, thank you for your patience. And here we have Elvis. Elvis is an umbrella cockatoo, and he lives with me, and he was a rescued rehome. I'm actually his third owner. And before I came to Hawk Mountain, Elvis worked with me at other nature centers as an education animal and also as an animal therapist for at-risk youth. So Elvis has visited Hawk Mountain a few times. He went this winter for our feather paint workshop as part of our Winter Artisan series, and people were painting on some of his molted feathers, and sometimes he visits our summer camps. So he is saying hello, and they're called There's 21 species of cockatoos, and the cockatoos have their crest feathers, which they raise up as a way to communicate with each other. And he's definitely, I think, trying to communicate with you all right now. So I'd like to just share some interesting adaptations that Elvis has, and then we can talk about the conservation status of wild umbrella cockatoos. So, and cockatoos, by the way, umbrella cockatoos, by the way, would live in the wild in Indonesia, in the rainforest, and often by river areas in Indonesia. So you might notice his big, big beak, and that's an adaptation. That's a tool to crack open the hard shells of nuts in the rainforest, which are an important food source for cockatoos. The umbrella cockatoos also eat fruit and seeds, maybe even some insects, maybe even a small lizard. Another really interesting adaptation that these cockatoos have is that they have zygodactyl feet. So what that means is there's 2 toes in the front and 2 in the back. And that's an adaptation that lets them climb very well up trees. And also woodpeckers have that type of zygodactyl feet. It also means that they have almost like 2 opposable sets of toes. And that allows their feet to almost manipulate objects, much like we use our fingers for. And I wonder if he could demonstrate how he does that. This is one of his favorite treats. Oh, and look how he uses his feet almost at like hands, and how he eats. And he is a messy eater, let me tell you. So also, another interesting trait of the umbrella cockatoo are their eyes. And there's something about their eyes that can help you determine if it's male or female. And so these umbrella cockatoos are sexually dimorphic, so you can tell the gender based on some of their outer appearances. So what color would you say his eyes are? They look pretty dark, right? So they're actually a really dark brown. And so that tells me he is a male, because the male umbrella cockatoos have a very dark brown iris, whereas the females have a lighter kind of orangey iris. Okay, so Elvis is an ambassador for the wild umbrella cockatoo species. And I wonder, how are their populations doing in the wild? Well, unfortunately, they're not doing too well. They are listed as vulnerable, and they are actually, populations are declining in the wild due to threats of deforestation, habitat loss, the illegal pet trade, and hunting for food. So the good news is, even here, if you're in the United States or wherever you're viewing from, there's things you can do, decisions you can make to protect Elvis's wild relatives in Indonesia. So number 1, don't purchase a pet parrot. Elvis is awesome and beautiful, but you know what? There's so many parrots that need a home in shelters and parrot rescues, so I would urge you to adopt instead of purchase. And you don't want to purchase an illegal parrot that was taken from the wild, right? And so if you notice, Elvis has this band on his leg. That band tells me that he was hatched legally from a breeder and not taken from the wild. Also, if Elvis were to get lost and fly away, and he is fully flighted, look at his beautiful wings, and someone were to find him, they could look at the numbers on this band and perhaps locate the breeder to hopefully, you know, find the owner. So another thing you can do to help protect wild cockatoos is really be conscious of your consumer choices. So we learned that deforestation is a major threat for these animals that live in the rainforest and in the canopy. And in Indonesia, where umbrella cockatoos live, palm oil plantations are one of the leading forces behind deforestation. So unfortunately, palm oil is in so many things. It's in almost 50% of processed goods, in food, soaps, shampoo, makeup. But the good news is, what you can do is choose to purchase products that only use sustainable palm oil. And there's certifications that are done for companies and plantations to be certified sustainable. And so what does that mean? If a sustainable palm oil plantation might have to leave corridors of forest for wildlife to pass through, they are not allowed to cut down primary forests. They are not allowed to cut down sections of forests that have high concentrations of biodiversity. So what you can do is you can do more research online, and you can find lists of companies that have pledged to only to use sustainable palm oil in their products. And what you can do to learn more, you can search Roundtable on sustainable palm oil and green palm to learn more. So Elvis says that he hopes you make good consumer choices to protect the rainforests and all animals. And I hope you enjoyed meeting him. Okay, so now I will try to see if I can take some questions from the audience. Let's see. Okay, okay, how do the counters know whether some of the hawks are local as opposed to those migrating through? That's a great question. Okay, so a raptor that is being counted on migration, when a raptor is migrating, they're on a mission. They might be in a thermal, rising up on the warm air currents to get high altitude, but once they get to that altitude, they're taking off in the direction that they're migrating, whether it's spring migration or fall migration. Whereas a resident raptor might just be hanging out, you know, not really going. But it's, you know, it's pretty clear when a raptor is migrating through, they are really passing through. Now, we do also have at South Lookout often in the fall, we'll have, you know, trainees there too, and sometimes volunteers, so they can communicate, and they might count a raptor going past it, but then at South Lookout, they see it go back. So there is that communication. Okay. Let's see, and I have an author, definitely someone who's interested in writing a storybook about Hawk Mountain. Please contact me. I'd be happy to help you with that. My email is Dawson, D-A-W-S-O-N @hawkmountain.org. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. I hope that you are having a wonderful Earth Day, and this is just part 1 of our Earth Day celebration. Please join us this evening at 7:00 p.m. for a very special Earth Day program. It's called Rosalie Edge, The Tie That Binds. And our guest speaker is author Diana Furmansky, who wrote a biography about our founder, Rosalie Edge. It's called Hawk of Mercy. And also we have other very special guests who will be joining us this evening. The grandchildren, Deborah and Stephen Edge of Rosalie, will be joining us. So please, you don't want to miss that program. We have our Home Discovery Series program every Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Next week's program on Wednesday the 29th is Meet the Kestrel. On another program we have coming up on Friday, May 1st at 4:00 p.m. is Golden Eagles in Your Virtual Classroom with guest researchers from Montana. And then on Sunday, May 3rd, we have Rachel Carson, Inspiration, Legacy, and Challenge. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.